The rain pattered against the window as I sat in my cluttered office, a single desk lamp illuminating the faded newspaper clippings scattered before me. Each piece of paper whispered secrets about the man who had become a ghost, D.B. Cooper. I'd been obsessed with this case for years, drawn in by the enigma of a man who had pulled off the perfect crime and vanished without a trace. My mind flickered back to the night of November 24th, 1971. A man in a black suit, sunglasses, and a neatly folded tie boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle. He looked like any other businessman, but as the plane pierced through the rain-soaked sky, he transformed into something else entirely, a hijacker. As the flight progressed, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant, Tina Mucklow. The note revealed his intentions, demanding $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and the release of specific prisoners. The other passengers remained blissfully unaware of the unfolding drama until the plane landed in Seattle, where Cooper's demands were met. After a tense standoff, he released the hostages, keeping only the pilots on board as he prepared to make his escape. The rain that night was relentless, and it was this same rain that Cooper would slip into as he parachuted away from the plane, disappearing into the darkness. The FBI launched an extensive manhunt, but as the years passed, the trail grew colder, and Cooper faded into legend. Various theories emerged. Some claimed he perished in the wilderness, while others believed he had meticulously planned his escape and lived on. Yet, no concrete evidence ever surfaced to confirm any of these ideas. Sitting there in my office, I felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on me. Each time I revisited the details, new questions arose. Was he a criminal mastermind, or simply a desperate man looking for a way out? I had made it my mission to find answers, guided by my instincts and a few leads that had surfaced over the years. One of those leads had brought me to Agent Laura Fields, a young but seasoned FBI investigator who had been involved in the case for years. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Laura. "Jake, we need to meet. I found something." Her voice was urgent, and I felt a rush of anticipation. "I'll be there in 10, I replied, knowing that every clue could lead me closer to the truth. The rain continued to fall as I drove to our meeting place, the headlights illuminating the slick, dark asphalt. Each drop felt like a reminder of the storm that had surrounded Cooper's disappearance, a storm of confusion, intrigue, and the relentless search for clarity. Arriving at the coffee shop, I spotted Laura at our usual table, her brow furrowed in concentration as she reviewed a file. I slid into the chair across from her. "What did you find?" She pushed the file towards me. "These are eyewitness accounts we gathered during the initial investigation. There's something here that doesn't add up." As I flipped through the pages, a name caught my attention: Richard McCoy. His identity had been mentioned in connection with Cooper before, but the absence of solid evidence had left it as nothing more than a rumor. Laura leaned in, her eyes glinting with the excitement of discovery. McCoy was known for his own hijacking just a few months after Cooper. The similarities are uncanny. I pondered this revelation, a mixture of doubt and intrigue swirling in my mind. Was it possible that D.B. Cooper and Richard McCoy were connected? Or was this just another dead end along the winding road of this case? The rain tapped softly against the window, and I felt the tension in the air. The night was far from over. As we delved deeper into the accounts and theories, I realized that the mystery would not yield its secrets easily. "Jake," Laura said, breaking my focus, "the more we dig, the more it seems Cooper knew exactly what he was doing. There's a plan here that we're not seeing." Her tone was grave, laced with the realization that Cooper's disappearance was a carefully orchestrated event, not just an impulsive act of desperation. Nodding, I felt a surge of determination. We may be piecing together a puzzle that had eluded so many before us, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing something critical. The questions lingered. Who was D.B. Cooper? What drove him to hijack that plane? And where did he go once he jumped into the stormy night? The answers felt just out of reach, but I was resolute. This time, perhaps, we would uncover the truth. The rain had intensified, mirroring the turmoil in my mind, as I stared at the dimly lit office walls, covered in newspaper clippings and photographs of D.B. Cooper. Each article spoke of theories, sightings, and the relentless pursuit of a man who had managed to slip through the fingers of the law like smoke in the wind. Agent Laura Fields was meticulously reviewing the records we had compiled, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a faded photograph of a Pacific Northwest terrain map. "This is where some witnesses claim to see a parachute descending into the woods. We should focus our search here." I leaned in closer, tracing the contours of the map with my finger. And what if they were wrong? This is decades old. We could be chasing shadows. Laura straightened, her analytical gaze fixing on me. "Every shadow has a source, Jake. We just need to find the right light to illuminate it." I took a deep breath, the tension in the room palpable as we prepared to delve back into the past. "You remember the man we interviewed last week? The one who claimed he knew Cooper personally?" I asked, recalling the nervous smile of the witness who had regaled us with tales of a man with an uncanny resemblance to the iconic hijacker. "Yes. He mentioned something about a meeting in the woods after the hijacking, a clandestine rendezvous that lasted for hours. He said it was about the money," Laura replied, her eyes narrowing as she considered the implications. If he was telling the truth, that could change everything we know about Cooper's fate. It might lead us to the money, or at least to someone who knows what happened next. I felt a surge of adrenaline at the thought. We decided it was time to track down more leads in the area surrounding that map, reaching out to old contacts who might recall whispers about Cooper. The rain pattered against the window, a steady drumbeat that drowned out the silence of our deliberation. As we prepared to leave, I felt a chill run through me. The weight of history was heavy, and the ghost of Cooper loomed over us as we stepped into the storm. The scent of wet asphalt and pine filled the air, a haunting reminder that nature had both concealed and cradled his secret for far too long. The car ride was filled with the sounds of the windshield wipers battling against the downpour, and my mind wandered to the stories we had uncovered. Each lead seemed like a flickering candle in a vast, dark room, guiding us, yet often leading us astray. We arrived at the outskirts of a small town, where the witness had mentioned meeting with shady characters. The atmosphere was thick with intrigue, and as we parked the car, I noticed a flicker of movement near the trees. "Did you see that?" I asked Laura, gesturing toward the shadow. She nodded, her instincts kicking in. "Let's check it out." We approached cautiously, the underbrush crunching beneath our feet. I could feel the tension coil in my stomach. This was either a breakthrough or a trap. As we neared the clearing, the rain began to taper off, revealing a small, makeshift campsite. It looked abandoned, but bore signs of recent activity: half-burnt wood and an old, rusted can. "It seems like someone was here not too long ago," I muttered, squatting down to inspect the area. Laura found a scrap of fabric caught in a low-hanging branch, and we exchanged glances, excitement mingling with apprehension. "This could belong to Cooper," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a surge of hope and dread as I held the fabric in my hands. It was too small to be conclusively tied to Cooper, but it was a piece of the puzzle nonetheless. If we can find out who it belonged to, we might discover more about the people involved in Cooper's disappearance. Just then, a noise from the woods made us freeze. Both of us instinctively reached for our badges, readying ourselves for whatever might emerge from the shadows. From the trees, a figure stepped forward, drenched but alive. "You're looking for Cooper, aren't you?" the figure rasped, his voice heavy with the weight of secrets. My heart raced. This was the break we had been waiting for. But as his face came into focus, the recognition hit me like a punch to the gut. This man was not just any witness. He was the very man we had interviewed, the one who spoke of the meeting in the woods. "You," I said, taking a step closer. "You said you knew him." His eyes darted nervously, and I could see the fear reflected in them. "I know more than you think, but it's dangerous," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to emerge from the trees. "You need to listen carefully." Laura and I exchanged a look, our instincts screaming that this was it, the moment we had been waiting for. But would he reveal the truth? or would this lead us deeper into a web of intrigue that could ensnare us both? "We can help you," Laura urged, her voice steady but urgent. "But you need to trust us." The man hesitated, his gaze still flicking to the shadows. "Trust is a luxury you can't afford in this game. But I can tell you where to find something Cooper left behind, something that could change everything." The storm began to rage once more, but in that moment, the tempest outside was nothing compared to the whirlwind of possibilities that lay ahead. I felt the weight of the choices we'd made, the paths we'd taken, converge into this singular moment. "What do you know?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tumult inside me. And as he opened his mouth to speak, I knew we were about to uncover secrets that would either lead us to the truth we sought or plunge us into darkness we might never escape. It was time to confront the past, to face Cooper's legacy, and to discover just how deep the rabbit hole went. "Follow me," he said, the urgency palpable in his tone, before turning and vanishing into the rain-soaked trees. In that instant, we had no choice but to pursue him into the unknown, driven by the hope of answers that lay just beyond our reach. The air was thick with the aroma of wet earth and pine, each step crunching softly on the carpet of needles beneath my feet. Agent Laura Fields walked beside me, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a sword. We had been following the lead from a tip-off that came too late last night, just as the rain started to patter against the leaves. The tip suggested that a piece of evidence connected to the D.B. Cooper case lay hidden not far from here. "You think it could be the parachute?" Laura asked, her voice low yet eager. I scanned the treetops, half expecting D.B. himself to drop in on us from above. "I don't know, but we can't rule anything out," I replied, my skepticism surfacing once again. The case had more twists than a river, and every lead seemed to circle back into the shadows. As we moved deeper, the sound of the rain became a steady backdrop, mingling with the rustling leaves. I recalled the details of the hijacking, the calm demeanor of Cooper, the flight attendant's fear, the enigmatic note he slipped to the stewardess. The man had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but questions and theories. "What if he never left?" Laura mused, breaking my thoughts. "What if he just disappeared in the chaos?" I shook my head, the notion both intriguing and absurd. You can't just disappear after jumping out of a plane with $200,000. People don't just vanish without a trace unless they plan it meticulously. Laura's flashlight flickered over a cluster of boulders ahead. "Look there," she pointed, excitement threading through her voice. I stepped closer, my heart racing as I approached the low-hanging branches. What lay beneath them? A backpack? A tattered piece of fabric? But instead, we found an oddly shaped rock, partially buried in the mud. It was smooth, almost polished, standing out from the jagged stones surrounding it. I knelt down, scrutinizing the ground around it, aware that time was against us. "I think it's a marker, part of a trail maybe, or..." My voice trailed off as I reached out to touch the stone. It felt oddly warm, as if it had absorbed the heat from something long gone. Laura paused beside me, her brow furrowed. "Are you all right?" she asked, noting my hesitation. I nodded but couldn't shake the sensation gnawing at me. This wasn't just an ordinary rock. It felt like it held a secret. "Let's keep looking," I said, standing up and brushing the dirt from my knees. As we resumed our search, I couldn't help but feel we were on the cusp of something significant, a clue that would breathe life into the cold case. The woods around us grew denser, the trees looming like ancient sentinels. Suddenly, Laura halted, her expression shifting. She focused her light on a nearby tree, and I followed her gaze. There, etched into the bark, was a series of numbers. 1971. The year Cooper vanished. My pulse quickened. Could this be a breadcrumb left behind? "What do you think it means?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Could be a date or a code," I replied, trying to piece together the puzzle. I took a step closer, my fingers tracing the rough grooves. If Cooper had some sort of hideout, maybe it leads us to it. Laura knelt to examine the ground at the tree's base. "Look, there are footprints here. They seem fresh." She pointed out the faint impressions in the mud. My heart raced again. We weren't alone. "Let's follow them," I whispered, the thrill of the chase igniting my senses. We moved cautiously, the trees closing in around us as if trying to guard their secrets. After several minutes of following the trail, we stumbled upon a clearing. The moon broke through the clouds for a brief moment, illuminating a makeshift camp that had clearly seen better days. Tattered fabric hung from the branches, a torn piece of parachute fluttering in the wind. My breath caught in my throat. This was something I'd been searching for. "Jake, look over there." Laura pointed to a box half buried in the underbrush. I rushed over, heart pounding, and unearthed it with trembling hands. It was a weathered metal box, the surface rusted but intact. "This could be it," I exclaimed, glancing at Laura. We both knew what this could mean, a direct connection to Cooper. I fumbled with the latch, finally prying it open. Inside was a bundle wrapped in oilskin, and as I peeled it back, a glimmer of something caught my eye. It was a stack of old banknotes, still crisp despite the years. My mind raced. Could it be the very money Cooper extorted? "This is incredible," Laura breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. But as I lifted the notes, a chill ran down my spine. What if this was a trap? A sinister reminder left by someone who wanted to keep Cooper's secret buried. My thoughts spiraled as I tucked the money back into the box, glancing around the clearing. "We need to get this evidence back to the Bureau, now!" But as we turned to leave, a rustling in the bushes startled us. I reached for my flashlight, directing the beam into the shadows. The rustling stopped, and for a moment, all I could hear was the thumping of my heart. Then, a figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked and menacing, stepping into the moonlight. My instincts screamed danger. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The figure took a step forward, removing its hood to reveal a familiar face. It was someone I hadn't expected to see at all. "I thought you'd be here," the person said, their voice low and strangely calm. The tension hung in the air as I exchanged glances with Laura. I felt the grip of uncertainty tighten around me, and I knew we were about to step into a deeper mystery than we had prepared for. "What do you know about D.B. Cooper?" I asked, ready for whatever revelation would unfold next. As the figure smiled, the shadows seemed to deepen around us, heralding secrets that were desperate to escape the confines of the past. "More than you can imagine, Jake," they replied, and in that moment, I realized we were standing at the precipice of an unraveling that could change everything. And as the rain began to fall harder around us, I braced myself for the truths that lay ahead. The rain tapped rhythmically against the windows of my small office, a steady reminder of the secrets that had washed over this case for decades. The glow of the desk lamp cast shadows that danced along the walls. As I leaned back in my chair, staring at a cluttered board filled with newspaper clippings and photographs of D.B. Cooper, each pinned item was a thread in a web that I was determined to unravel. I had spent countless hours poring over the details. The hijacking of a Boeing 727 on that fateful November night in 1971. The meticulous method Cooper employed to extort $200,000 and the baffling disappearance that followed. Just as I began to lose myself in the details, my phone rang, jolting me back to the present. It was Agent Laura Fields, the FBI agent who had been my reluctant partner in this investigation. "Jake, I need you to meet me at the old abandoned airstrip outside of town. I found something that might change everything we thought we knew about Cooper," Laura said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. I grabbed my jacket, shoving my notes into a battered leather bag. The airstrip had been the site of many theories, some wild and others grounded in reality. As I drove through the rain-soaked streets, the headlights flickered over the glistening pavement, mirroring my racing thoughts. What could Laura have uncovered? When I arrived, the dim lights of her car illuminated a small cluster of trees bordering the strip. Laura stood under the flickering light of a street lamp, her expression serious. "What did you find?" I asked, unable to hide my curiosity. "Follow me," she instructed, leading me towards a section of the airstrip that hadn't seen activity in years. The ground was uneven and covered with patches of mud. She stopped at a spot where an old rusted fence had collapsed. "Look closely," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I bent down, brushing away the wet leaves and debris. Beneath them lay a tattered parachute, its colors faded but still recognizable. This could be it," I breathed, my heart racing. Laura nodded, her eyes alight with a mixture of excitement and caution. It's been buried here for decades. We need to get it examined immediately. As we carefully extracted the parachute from its resting place, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were unearthing more than just fabric. We were pulling back the veil on a mystery that had haunted this region for far too long. The rain poured harder, soaking us as we worked. My mind raced with possibilities. Had Cooper survived? Did he bury the parachute here, or had it been lost in a failed escape? Questions swirled around us like the storm clouds above. Once we secured the parachute, we hurried back to the car, both of us dripping wet and exhilarated. This could lead us straight to Cooper, or at least give us clues about what happened after the hijacking, I said, my voice thick with anticipation. Exactly. But we need to tread carefully. If this is indeed Cooper's, it will attract a lot of attention. The media, the public, everyone will want a piece of this story, Laura replied, her analytical mind already racing ahead to the potential ramifications. I knew she was right. The moment we revealed this discovery, we would be thrust into a frenzy. But the thrill of the chase, the chance to solve one of America's greatest mysteries, overshadowed my concerns. I couldn't help but feel that we were close. The drive back was filled with a charged silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. I couldn't help but glance over at Laura. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, deep in the process of piecing together the fragments of evidence. She was brilliant in her methodical approach, something that had both frustrated and impressed me since we began this journey together. As we reached my office, I opened the door, and the familiar scent of old paper and coffee hit me. The cozy clutter of my workspace felt like home, but today it was alive with possibilities. We laid the parachute out on my desk, the fabric still damp and heavy with history. What do we look for? I asked, initiating our investigation anew. We need to find any identifying marks, manufacturers, or even any traces of DNA that could lead us to Cooper himself or to someone connected to him. Every detail matters, Jake, Laura replied, her eyes scanning the surface of the parachute. Right, I murmured, pulling out a flashlight. Together, we examined every inch, searching for any clue that could link this relic from the past to the enigmatic figure who had slipped through the fingers of law enforcement all those years ago. Hours passed as we meticulously combed through the fabric. The rain continued its relentless patter outside, a fitting soundtrack to our investigation. Finally, just as I was about to suggest a break, something caught my eye, a faint, almost imperceptible logo on one of the straps. I leaned closer, squinting to see it clearly against the fading light. "Laura, look at this," I exclaimed, pointing it out. She grabbed the flashlight, her expression shifting to one of keen focus. "This could be a lead. If we can trace the manufacturer, it might tell us where this parachute was made, when it was made too." A sense of urgency filled the room. We'd been swimming in theories, but now we had something tangible to pursue. The light from the desk lamp flickered as a gust of wind rattled the old windows, but within that moment of uncertainty, we found clarity. "We need to contact the manufacturer right away," I said, my determination rising. As we gathered our notes and prepared to make calls, I felt a surge of hope. For years, the case had seemed like an unsolvable puzzle, but now we had a piece that could fit. The rain outside fell harder, drumming a steady beat that mirrored the pounding of my heart. Just as I was about to dial the number, a thought crossed my mind. What if we weren't the only ones interested in this parachute? The world had obsessed over D.B. Cooper for decades, and now, with new evidence, we could be on the brink of something monumental. "Jake, do you think anyone else knows about this?" Laura asked, her voice cutting through my spiraling thoughts. "I don't know, but if they do, we need to move fast. This could slip through our fingers just like Cooper did." With that, I punched in the number, ready to chase down this new lead. The line rang, and as I waited, I glanced at the parachute once more, feeling an electric thrill. We were about to plunge deeper into a mystery that had resisted resolution for too long. The voice on the other end answered, and as I began to speak, I felt the weight of history bearing down on us, urging us forward into the unknown. And then, just as the conversation began to unfold, a loud crash echoed from outside, interrupting the moment. I froze, my heart pounding as I exchanged a worried glance with Laura, who was already moving towards the window. What now? The secrets of the past were still out there, waiting to be uncovered, but it seemed like something, or someone, was intent on stopping us. And in that moment, the mystery deepened, pulling us into a darkened spiral of intrigue. "Let's see what that was," Laura said, determination etched on her face. As we stepped outside into the rain, the night was fraught with uncertainty. And I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was time to confront the shadows head-on before they engulfed us completely. The rain had begun to fall heavier, each droplet slapping the pavement like a countdown to something inevitable. I pulled my collar up against the chill and squinted into the dim light of the street lamp at the end of the block. The world felt soaked in mystery, and I was in the midst of it, the ghost of D.B. Cooper, looming larger than life, even after decades. As I made my way toward the diner where I had arranged to meet Agent Laura Fields, my mind raced back to our last conversation. We had unearthed some new leads, a series of letters sent to the FBI by someone claiming to be Cooper himself. The postmarks dated just a week before our meeting, each one leading us deeper down the rabbit hole. Laura, with her analytical mind, had suggested we meet there to review the contents together, a strategy I found prudent. When I entered the diner, the warmth enveloped me. It felt like stepping into another era, with the flickering neon lights reflecting off the chrome and the scent of fresh coffee filling the air. I spotted Laura at a booth in the back, her brow furrowed in concentration as she flipped through a stack of papers. She looked up and gestured me over with a nod, her eyes glinting with the seriousness of our task. "Jake, you made it," she said, sliding a coffee cup across the table. "I think you'll find this interesting." I settled in, eyeing the papers. They were the letters, handwritten, but the ink showed no signs of age despite their supposed origin. The first had a simple message: "I'm still out there, and I know things." It felt like a taunt, and I shivered at the implications. Laura pointed to the next document, her finger tracing the letters. "This part is particularly unsettling. It references the hijacking like it's a fond memory. The thrill of the jump, the rush of the chase," it says. How could anyone feel nostalgia for something so chaotic? I leaned closer, swallowing the knot forming in my stomach. It's as if he's proud of it, like a badge of honor. But if someone is still out there, this could mean Cooper isn't just a ghost of the past. He might still be alive, living among us. Or someone wants us to believe that. We have to be careful, Jake. This could be a trap, Laura warned, her eyes narrowing as she flipped to the next letter. Each letter told a story, but the further we went, the more complex it became. One letter even claimed that Cooper had hidden the money in a location known only to him, with hints embedded in the text. It felt like a treasure map for the reckless. If this is real, we might be able to find him, or at least the money. But we need to be thorough. We can't let emotion cloud our judgment. Every theory has its merits, but we need facts, Laura said, her tone shifting from excitement to methodical. I nodded, knowing she was right. As we continued to pore over the letters, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Each word weighed heavily, a mixture of dread and intrigue, and I wondered how many other eyes were on this case, how many others sought the truth as we did. The sound of the diner door chime pulled my attention momentarily, and I glanced up to see a figure enter. A man dressed in a dark jacket looked around, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto our booth. An unease settled in my stomach as he walked toward us, purposeful and confident. "Detective Sullivan, Agent Fields," he asked, his voice smooth yet edged with something I couldn't quite place. I tensed. "Yes? Can we help you?" I managed, my instincts flaring. "I have information regarding your case. It's sensitive. May I sit?" Without waiting for an answer, he slid into the booth across from us, his gaze steady on Laura. She exchanged a glance with me, then nodded reluctantly. "Go ahead. What do you know?" The man leaned in, lowering his voice. "I know where Cooper hid the money, and I know who he is. But you need to understand the risks involved in pursuing this. There are others involved who don't want the truth to come out." My heart raced. This was the kind of lead we had been waiting for, but the ominous warning sent shivers down my spine. "What makes you think we can trust you?" I asked, trying to maintain an air of skepticism. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table towards me. "This is a map. You need to get there before anyone else does. But be warned, someone is watching you. They'll do anything to protect their secret." I took the paper, unfolding it carefully. It was a simple map of the area, but highlighted were points of interest, locations that could lead us to Cooper's hidden treasure if it was indeed real. My mind raced with the possibilities, but the threat echoed in my thoughts. "You should leave now," he urged, glancing over his shoulder. "They know I'm here and they'll come for me, and for you too." The urgency in his tone was unmistakable. I looked at Laura, and the decision was made in an instant. We had to leave before we became targets in a game we had yet to fully understand. As we stood to leave, I folded the map carefully, tucking it into my jacket pocket. The weight of it felt like a ticking clock. Could Cooper still be alive? And if so, was he still out there, watching us? Just as we reached the door, the man called out, his voice rising above the diner's ambient noise. "Remember, not everyone is on your side. Trust no one." The rain poured down harder as we stepped outside, the world around us dark and foreboding. I tightened my grip on the map, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. We were now deeper in the mystery than ever. As we made our way to the car, I glanced back at the diner, half expecting to see the man still watching us through the fogged glass. But there was only the reflection of my own worried face staring back. With every breath, I could feel the pulse of Cooper's legacy, stronger than before. The question now was not just who else was searching for the truth, but what lengths they would go to keep it hidden. And as I climbed into the driver's seat, a new realization dawned on me. This was just the beginning of a dangerous chase. The engine roared to life, and as I turned the car onto the street, I felt the weight of the map pressing against my chest, a reminder of the path that lay ahead. We were no longer just investigators. We had become players in a game of shadows, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. And with that thought, I glanced over at Laura. Determination mirrored in her eyes. "Let's find Cooper," I declared, and as we drove into the stormy night, I knew the next chapter was just beginning. The weight of the map in my pocket felt heavier than ever as I stared into the abyss of trees shrouded in mist. Each line and marking hinted at a story long forgotten, yet unearthing it could finally lead us to D.B. Cooper, or whatever remained of him. As I unfolded the crumpled paper once more, I noticed a series of coordinates scribbled hastily in the corner. It was a clue, maybe a breadcrumb leading us to a hidden truth. "Jake," Laura's voice sliced through the murky silence. Her analytical nature kicked in, and I could see the gears turning in her head. "These coordinates, they point to a location in the woods not far from here. We should check it out." I nodded, my skepticism battling with an undeniable curiosity. Every case I'd worked on had taught me to trust my instincts, but this felt different. The air was thick with anticipation and something else. Fear, perhaps. The thought of stepping deeper into the unknown sent a shiver down my spine. With a determined stride, we made our way back to the car, the rain beginning to patter softly against the roof. I glanced at Laura, who was busy typing the coordinates into her phone. "You really think this will lead us to Cooper?" I asked, my voice betraying a mix of hope and doubt. "It's possible. The FBI has been searching for him for decades. If we find something, we could finally get some answers," she replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. As we drove through winding roads, the forest closed in around us, the trees standing like silent sentinels guarding their secrets. The rain intensified, drenching the landscape in a dark sheen, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The closer we got to the destination, the more anxious I became. Laura parked the car alongside a muddy path leading into the woods. We grabbed our gear, a flashlight, a first aid kit, and the map, of course, before stepping out into the rain. The air felt electric, charged with the possibility of discovery, but also with unease. Let's stick together, I urged as we ventured into the forest. The damp earth squished beneath our feet, and the tall trees loomed overhead, blocking out the last remnants of daylight. Every sound amplified in the stillness, the rustling leaves, the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. We followed the coordinates, each step echoing the unanswered questions that had haunted me for years. Why had Cooper chosen this specific spot? What had happened to him after he jumped? And why did the conspiracy seem to stretch beyond just one man? The more I pondered, the more tangled the web became. After what felt like hours of walking, we reached a small clearing. My flashlight beam danced across the ground, illuminating a series of strange markings carved into a thick tree trunk. "Laura, look at this!" I called out, motioning for her to come closer. She examined the markings, tracing her fingers along the grooves. "These look ancient." "They might be Native American symbols," she said, her tone shifting from analytical to curious. "But what would they be doing here?" As we stood there, pondering the significance, I noticed something glinting amid the roots of the tree. I knelt down to investigate, brushing away the damp leaves and soil. My heart raced as I uncovered a small, rusted metal box. "What do you think it is?" Laura asked, her voice barely a whisper. I hesitated before lifting the lid. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, lay a collection of documents and photographs. My fingers trembled as I pulled them out, revealing weathered papers that appeared to be old bank statements, alongside faded photographs of a young man resembling Cooper. He was smiling, carefree, a stark contrast to the man who had made headlines decades ago. "We need to take these back," I said, excitement and trepidation mixing within me. This could change everything we know about Cooper. But as I turned to look for Laura, my heart sank. She was staring off into the distance, her expression tense. "Jake, there's something coming this way," she said, her voice low and urgent. I followed her gaze, squinting into the thickening shadows of the forest. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I could hear the crunching of leaves and the sound of someone, or something, approaching us. "We need to go now!" I shouted, stuffing the documents back into the box and grabbing Laura's arm. With a mixture of fear and adrenaline, we sprinted back the way we came, the sound of footsteps echoing behind us. The woods, once a place of mystery, now felt like a trap closing in around us. As we burst into the clearing where the car was parked, I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking. "Get in!" I yelled, and we both dove into the car, slamming the doors shut just as I turned the engine over. The headlights illuminated the trees ahead, and I could see movement just at the edge of the light. Whatever was following us had stopped, watching. I pressed the gas pedal and we sped away, the rain splattering against the windshield like frantic warnings. "What was that?" Laura asked, breathing heavily, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but I have a feeling we just opened a door that should have remained closed," I replied, my mind racing. As we drove back towards town, I couldn't shake the sensation that we were not just pursuing answers about Cooper anymore. We had fallen into something much larger, a conspiracy that had claws reaching out to pull us back into its depths. With the documents secured and the mystery deepening, I knew we were on the precipice of uncovering something monumental. But now, it was a race against time, and those who didn't want the truth to come out. As I glanced at Laura, I saw the same resolve burning in her eyes, a shared determination to not only seek the truth, but to survive it. "Next stop," I said, my voice steadying. "We find out who else is looking for D.B. Cooper." The streets glistened under the glow of streetlights, reflecting the dreariness of the evening sky. I drove through the small town, my mind racing with possibilities. Each bend in the road could lead to the unraveling of a mystery that had eluded law enforcement for decades. Could this tip be the breakthrough I had been searching for? I parked outside a diner that had been mentioned in the anonymous tip-off. A neon sign flickered, inviting yet unnerving. I stepped inside, shaking off the rain that clung to my coat. The scent of coffee and greasy food filled the air, mingling with the sound of soft conversations and the clinking of dishes. At the far end of the counter sat a man in a worn leather jacket, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. He nursed a cup of coffee, but his eyes darted around, as if he were guarding a secret. I approached him cautiously, my instincts honed from years of investigation. "You Jake Sullivan?" he asked, his voice low, barely audible over the diner noise. I nodded, taking a seat across from him. "I hear you're looking for Cooper." I leaned in, curiosity piqued. "And you have information?" The man hesitated, glancing towards the diner's entrance. "Not here. Too many ears. Meet me by the old bridge at midnight." The old bridge. It had been a local hangout for years, rumored to be a place where secrets were exchanged. I agreed, and after a few more vague exchanges, he slipped out of the booth and vanished into the night, leaving me with more questions than answers. As the clock struck midnight, I drove to the bridge, anxiety coiling tighter with each passing moment. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air felt heavy with anticipation. I parked on the gravel shoulder, the headlights illuminating the imposing structure ahead. I stepped out of the car, pulling my coat tighter against the chill. The sound of water rushing beneath the bridge echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. Just then, I noticed a figure emerge from the shadows. He was taller than I had expected, his face obscured by the darkness. "You came," he said, his voice steady. "I need answers," I replied, my resolve hardening. "What do you know about D.B. Cooper?" The man took a deep breath, glancing around to ensure we were alone. "He's been living under a different name, right here in Oregon. I can help you find him, but you need to understand the risks. This isn't just a case of an old hijacking anymore. There are people who want him to stay vanished." My mind raced with the implications. Could it really be true? The thought ignited a fire within me. "Who?" I demanded. He hesitated, then finally spoke. "The same people he dealt with years ago. They don't take kindly to loose ends." As I processed this new layer of complexity, I felt the weight of the investigation pressing down upon me. My instincts screamed that I was on the verge of a significant breakthrough, yet I was acutely aware of the dangers involved. Before I could ask him more, a distant sound broke through the night, a vehicle approaching quickly. The man's expression shifted from calm to alarm. "We need to go," he urged, turning to flee. I followed suit, adrenaline surging as we dashed toward my car. The headlights of an approaching vehicle illuminated the scene, and I could hear voices shouting in the distance. Whoever was after us was closing in fast. I fumbled with my keys, my heart pounding as I climbed into the driver's seat. The man slid into the passenger side, just as a flash of light illuminated the area. I glanced back through the rearview mirror and saw two figures emerge from the other vehicle, their faces obscured by shadows, but their intentions clear. "Drive," he shouted, and I slammed my foot on the accelerator, the tires screeching against the gravel. We sped away from the bridge, the headlights fading into the distance as I navigated through the winding roads. My mind was racing, processing the information I had just uncovered. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and I had to dig deeper to uncover the truth. The man beside me finally spoke, his voice steady despite the chaos. "They won't stop looking for him. If you're really going after Cooper, you need to be prepared for anything. He's a ghost, and ghosts don't want to be found." "Why should I trust you?" I shot back, skepticism creeping into my tone. "You could be leading me into a trap." He turned to me, his gaze unwavering. "Because I know the truth. I might be the only one who can help you navigate this mess. But you need to stay focused. Don't let fear dictate your choices." I nodded, realizing he was right. This was no longer just about solving a case. It was about survival. The rain returned, drumming against the windshield like a frantic heartbeat, reminding me of the urgency of our situation. As we reached a secluded area, I pulled over, the tires crunching on the gravel as I turned off the engine. "What's the next step?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos that lingered in the air. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper as he began to outline a plan. "We need to start by tracing his past connections. There's a woman, a former associate of his, who might know more, but she's in hiding, and finding her won't be easy." I took a deep breath, my determination solidifying with each word he spoke. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The shadows of the past were creeping closer, but I would not let them engulf me. As I prepared to set this plan into motion, the man's gaze met mine, and in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just another case, It was a journey into the unknown. I was ready to confront the ghosts of D.B. Cooper's past, eager to uncover the truth and perhaps solve a mystery that had haunted the nation for too long. With a final glance at the rain-soaked road ahead, I turned to the man beside me. "Let's go find D.B. Cooper." And as we drove into the night, I felt the weight of decades of mystery pressing down upon us, ready to reveal its secrets. I stepped out into the rain, my trench coat clinging to my skin as droplets cascaded down from the brim of my fedora. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the slick pavement. I had a meeting with Agent Laura Fields, a meticulous analyst with the FBI who had been knee-deep in Cooper's case for years. Our collaboration felt like an uneasy alliance. She adhered strictly to the evidence while I relied on intuition and old-fashioned sleuthing. As I approached the diner where we had agreed to meet, the neon sign buzzed softly, illuminating the raindrops that danced in the air. I pushed through the door, the bell above jingling in protest, and made my way to a booth in the back. Laura was already seated, her laptop open, and a stack of files neatly arranged in front of her. "You're late," she said without looking up, her fingers rapidly tapping on the keyboard. "Traffic was a nightmare," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. I could see the fatigue etched in her features, a look I recognized all too well from my own reflection. "I found something you might find interesting," she said, finally giving me her full attention. She slid a file across the table toward me, and I flipped it open. Inside were photographs of an old cabin hidden deep in the woods north of Portland. The cabin had been abandoned, but several locals claimed to have seen strange figures lurking nearby just weeks after the hijacking. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with curiosity. "Could it be a lead?" I studied the photographs, the shadows of the trees looming menacingly over the structure. "Looks ominous, doesn't it?" I muttered, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I'd always been drawn to the unknown, but there was something about this cabin that felt particularly unsettling. "It's been investigated multiple times, but nothing conclusive has ever come out of it," Laura replied, her gaze unwavering. "However, I came across a witness statement from a man who claims he saw someone matching Cooper's description not far from that cabin. A thrill of excitement coursed through me. Do we have a name?" "Yes, but it's not much. He's been in and out of psychiatric care, making it hard to trust his account. He mentioned something about hearing a plane overhead the night of the hijacking." "Did he see anything?" I interrupted, my mind racing with possibilities. "Just a shadowy figure, but he swears it was Cooper. He also mentioned a briefcase." I leaned back, pondering the implications. "A briefcase? That could be significant." "The money was packed in a briefcase," Laura nodded. "Exactly. If there's any chance this man is telling the truth, we might need to visit that cabin." The idea sent a jolt of electricity through me. I could almost visualize Cooper there, pulling off his audacious escape. But another thought nagged at me. What if we were walking into a trap? The rain drummed against the window, a rhythm that matched the beating of my heart. "Let's go," I said, determination hardening my resolve. Laura raised an eyebrow. "Just like that?" "We can't wait around for another lead to slip through our fingers. Besides, if there's even a chance we could find something, we owe it to ourselves to check it out." She sighed, clearly weighing the risks. But after a moment she nodded. "All right, but we go prepared." As we finished our coffee and gathered our things, I glanced out the window at the darkened street. The rain was still relentless, but it felt like it was washing away the doubts that had clouded my mind for too long. The thrill of the chase was upon me again, and it filled the air with a sense of urgency. Once outside, I opened the car door for Laura, and we climbed into my old sedan, the engine sputtering to life as we pulled away from the diner. The city blurred past us, the raindrops creating a cascade of shimmering reflections on the windshield. We made our way toward the outskirts, where the dense forest loomed ahead like an ancient guardian of lost secrets. As we drove, I couldn't help but replay the details of the case in my mind. D.B. Cooper had become an obsession for me. The airplane heist was not just a crime, it was a symbol of freedom, of rebellion against a system that felt oppressive. Yet, with every twist, I found myself grappling with the shadows of Cooper's legacy and the mounting toll it had taken on all who sought to understand it. After an hour of winding roads and heavy downpour, we pulled up to the clearing where the cabin stood. It was an unassuming structure, worn and weather-beaten, blending into the surroundings as if it had been there for centuries. I parked the car, and the two of us stepped out into the rain, the cold seeping into our bones. "Do you really think we'll find anything?" Laura asked, adjusting her jacket against the wind. "If he was here, we might find some clues, but we need to be careful." I started, but a rustling in the bushes cut me off. We froze, the sound echoing in the quiet of the rain. I turned, squinting into the thick underbrush. My heart raced as I took a cautious step forward, and then I saw it. A figure, barely discernible, darting away from the edge of the clearing. Without thinking, I took off after it, my instincts kicking in. Laura followed closely, her breath quickening as we chased through the trees. "Jake, wait!" she shouted, but I was driven by the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The figure vanished deeper into the woods, and I pushed through the branches, determined to uncover the truth behind this fleeting shadow. Each step felt heavier, the rain soaking through my clothes, but the thrill of discovery propelled me forward. As I reached a small ridge, I paused, catching my breath. In that moment, I knew we were on the brink of something monumental, a connection to the past that could finally unravel the mystery of D.B. Cooper. But as I scanned the area, the figure was gone. Disappointment washed over me, mixing with the rain that continued to fall, leaving me with an unsettling feeling. "What was that?" Laura's voice broke through my thoughts as she caught up, her eyes darting around anxiously. "I don't know, but we can't let it slip away. Let's regroup and find that cabin." "There has to be more here than meets the eye," I replied, determination rekindled. Together, we moved cautiously toward the cabin, unaware that we were closer to the truth than we realized, hurtling into a past that would shift everything we thought we knew about the legend of D.B. Cooper. With each step, the rain continued to fall, a symphony of secrets awaiting our discovery, as I prepared to delve deeper into the mystery that had captivated so many for decades. As we approached the cabin, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt thick, charged with a sense of foreboding that wrapped around us like a fog. The wooden structure loomed ahead, its dilapidated frame barely visible under the flickering light of our flashlights. I glanced at Laura, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was always the analytical one, dissecting every piece of evidence like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "You think he could have stayed here?" she asked, breaking the silence as we reached the cabin's door. The wood creaked ominously under our weight, as if it were warning us to turn back. "It's possible. This could have been a hideout," I replied, shoving the door open. It swung inward with a groan, revealing darkness that swallowed the beam of our flashlights. Inside, the cabin was untouched by time, a snapshot of a life once lived. We stepped in cautiously, the floorboards creaking beneath our feet. The air was stale, thick with the scent of damp wood and decaying leaves. I scanned the room, taking in the scattered papers strewn across a small table, the remnants of a half-burnt fire still smoldering in the hearth. "Look at this," Laura said, kneeling beside the table. She picked up a torn piece of paper, its edges frayed and yellowed. It was covered in notes, frantic scrawls that hinted at a restless mind. "It might be something important," I joined her, squinting at the faded ink. The words were barely legible, but I could make out phrases like money, escape plan, and a name that sent a shiver down my spine. D.B. Cooper. It was as if the ghost of Cooper himself was lingering in this room, whispering secrets just out of reach. "This could change everything we think we know about him," I said, my mind racing. We had come seeking answers about the mysterious hijacker who had captivated the nation, and here was a clue that could unravel the tangled web of theories surrounding his fate. Laura stood up, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We need to document this. If this is linked to Cooper, it could provide new leads to follow." I nodded, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. For the first time in a long time, I felt the thrill of the chase. We were on the brink of uncovering something significant, a piece of history that had eluded so many before us. As we continued to search the cabin, Every creak and groan of the old structure seemed to echo with the whispers of the past. A cold wind swept through a broken window, sending a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. We moved methodically through the small space, our flashlights dancing across the walls. On the far side of the cabin, I noticed an old map pinned to the wall. The edges were tattered, and it had clearly seen better days, but the markings were unmistakable. There were small dots connected by lines, an intricate web of locations that spanned across the Pacific Northwest. "This looks like a route," I said, pointing to the map. "Could this have been his escape plan?" Laura stepped closer, her fingers tracing the lines. "If he used the wilderness, he could have easily evaded authorities. This area is vast and treacherous. It would make sense." The realization hit me hard. If Cooper had survived, he could have easily slipped away into the shadows of this very landscape. But why leave such a detailed map behind? "It's almost too convenient," I muttered, a sense of caution creeping back in. What if someone else found this first? Or what if it's a trap? Laura frowned, her analytical mind churning through the possibilities. "We'll have to be on guard, but this could be what we need to finally get a lead. We should take the map with us, document everything." Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside, making us both jump. I exchanged a wary glance with Laura. What was that? We rushed to the window, our hearts racing. The rain had intensified, turning the world outside into a blurring sheet of gray. I squinted into the darkness, trying to discern what had disturbed the stillness of the night. Another crash, followed by a low growl. My instincts kicked in. "Stay back," I warned Laura, pulling her away from the window. The last thing we needed was to attract unwanted attention. As I turned to secure the door, I heard footsteps approaching the cabin, heavy and deliberate. My heart raced. Was it someone looking for Cooper's clues? Or were we about to come face to face with someone who wanted to keep those secrets buried? The footsteps stopped just outside, and I motioned for Laura to quiet down. We held our breath as we pressed against the wall, listening intently. Then, the doorknob rattled. I glanced at Laura, and we both shared a knowing look. We had to make a choice, stay hidden and wait to see who it was, or confront whatever was lurking outside. Finally, I decided. "We need to find out who it is," I whispered. I edged toward the door, my heart pounding louder than the storm outside, and steeled myself for whatever lay beyond. With a deep breath, I slowly turned the knob. The door swung open, revealing a shadowy figure drenched in rain, their face obscured. My grip tightened around the flashlight. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The figure hesitated, and in that moment, I realized we were teetering on the brink of something much larger than ourselves. We had uncovered threads of a mystery that might very well lead us to the truth about D.B. Cooper, and now, someone had come seeking the same answers we were chasing. I stepped forward, ready to confront this unexpected visitor, as the rain continued to pour outside, and a sense of destiny loomed in the air. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure warned, their voice low and gravelly, sending chills down my spine. And just then, everything changed. "Let's see what you really know about D.B. Cooper," I said, standing my ground, wondering if this stranger could be the key to unraveling the mystery once and for all. The rain fell in sheets as I parked my car outside the dimly lit diner. Its neon sign flickered hesitantly, casting a glow on the glistening pavement. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of coffee and nostalgia, the kind of place where secrets could easily be exchanged amidst the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversations. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever truths awaited me. As I stepped inside, my eyes scanned the room, settling on a figure slouched in a booth at the back. The man was middle-aged, with a weathered face that spoke of many storms weathered, his dark eyes darting nervously around the room. He looked up as I approached, and a flicker of recognition passed through his gaze. "Detective Sullivan?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. "Yeah, you're the one who contacted me," I replied, sliding into the booth opposite him. He nodded, glancing over his shoulder before leaning in, lowering his voice. "I've got information about D.B. Cooper, but it's risky to talk here." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. Why risk it? Because he's still out there. He's been watching, the man said, his gaze shifting to the diner windows. Watching? You mean Cooper? How do you know this? The man hesitated, as if weighing his words. My name's Frank. I didn't just see him after the hijacking. I spent some time with him. I know things. I leaned closer, my heart racing. What do you know? He took a shaky breath, his hands trembling slightly. After he jumped, he didn't go far. He landed in a wooded area not too far from here. I was camping nearby. When I saw him, he was different. Not just a man on the run. There was something else about him. Something almost calculated. I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and doubt. Calculated how? Frank glanced around again, his paranoia palpable. He had a plan, a way to disappear, and he kept talking about the money like it was just the beginning. Something bigger was at stake. Bigger? What do you mean? I pressed. Sensing the weight of his words, Frank leaned back, his expression turning somber. I can't say it all here, but I'll tell you one thing. D.B. Cooper was a ghost, but not just because he vanished into thin air. He had connections, people who could help him. I felt a chill run down my spine. The implications of his words were staggering. What kind of connections? Frank took a deep breath. That's what I came to tell you. He had ties to something darker, a network of people that could make him disappear without a trace. You need to understand, Jake, this isn't just about the money anymore. It's about power, influence, and the lengths some will go to keep secrets. His eyes bore into mine, and I could feel the urgency in his voice. I had chased Cooper's story for years, but I had never considered that it could stretch into something more sinister. Why should I trust you? I challenged, feeling the weight of the moment. Frank sighed, looking defeated. Because I'm risking my life talking to you. Those people I mentioned, they don't take kindly to loose ends. You might think you're close to the truth, but they'll do whatever it takes to keep it buried. I considered his words carefully. If what he said was true, I was treading into territory that could lead to dark revelations. So what's our next step? Frank hesitated again, glancing nervously at the diner entrance. Meet me tomorrow night at the old bridge just outside town. I'll bring proof. But you have to be careful. If they see you, it could end badly. Who's they? I can't say. Just know that they're watching and you need to move quickly. The closer you get to the truth, the more likely they are to come for you. A shiver ran through me as I processed the weight of his words. And if I don't show, then I guess you'll never know what happened to D.B. Cooper, Frank replied, a somber look crossing his face. He slid out of the booth, leaving a few bills on the table, and before I could respond, he was gone, blending into the rain-soaked night. I sat in the booth, contemplating the gravity of our conversation. The questions swirled around my mind like the storm outside. What had Cooper gotten himself into? What kind of web was I about to step into? The thrill of the chase mixed with a sense of foreboding I couldn't shake. I finished my coffee and left the diner, my mind racing. The rain had slackened to a drizzle, but the night still felt heavy with secrets. I knew I had to prepare for the meeting at the bridge. This could be the breakthrough I had been waiting for, or it could lead to danger I wasn't ready to face. As I drove home, I couldn't help but recall the many theories surrounding Cooper's fate. Did he survive? Did he hide the money? Or was he part of a larger conspiracy? Each question only fueled my determination to uncover the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fall into place, but I had to find out what lay at the center of this mystery. I reached my apartment and began gathering my notes, recalling everything I had learned about Cooper and the theories surrounding him. The thrill of anticipation coursed through me. I was on the cusp of something significant. Tomorrow night could change everything. The clock ticked closer to midnight as I prepared for what lay ahead. Tomorrow I would meet Frank again, and in that meeting, I hoped to find answers that had eluded me for years. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the closer I got to uncovering the truth, the more perilous my situation would become. I had to be vigilant, aware that shadows lurked just outside the light of revelation. As I lay in bed, Sleep eluded me, my mind racing with possibilities and the weight of the secrets I was about to uncover. I closed my eyes, knowing that the next day could lead me deeper into the heart of the enigma that was D.B. Cooper. With dawn still a whisper in the horizon, I prepared myself for the unknown, ready to follow the clues wherever they might lead. Tomorrow night would unveil a path I hadn't dared to imagine, and as I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to embark on a journey into darkness, one that could alter everything I thought I knew about D.B. Cooper and myself. As I stood on the banks of the Columbia River, the sound of raindrops tapping against my car roof echoed the thoughts racing through my mind. The bridge loomed ahead, a relic of the past, much like the mystery that enveloped D.B. Cooper. My previous investigations had taken me down many paths, each leading to more questions than answers. Every theory I had explored was a thread in a tangled web that had ensnared not only my curiosity, but also the lives of countless others. I flicked on my flashlight and let its beam dance over the cracked asphalt of the bridge. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of earth and rain was intoxicating. I felt a familiar chill creep up my spine, not from the cold, but from the weight of history that hung in this place. D.B. Cooper had become more than just a name. He was a ghost, a figure in the fog of my life that refused to be exorcised. With each passing day, I grew more obsessed with his story. I had pored over FBI files, interviewed witnesses, and even met with Cooper enthusiasts who believed they had cracked the case. But the truth eluded me, like the fleeting mist that swirled around the bridge now. My thoughts drifted to Agent Laura Fields, the FBI agent who had reluctantly partnered with me on this case. She was methodical and analytical, a stark contrast to my more instinctual approach. Despite her skepticism, she had begun to see the layers of the Cooper case as something more than a simple hijacking. The rain intensified, and I found myself lost in the rhythm of the storm. I remembered the first time I had read about Cooper in that yellowed newspaper clipping. The audacity, the mystery, the sheer thrill of it all. He was a man who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a legacy of intrigue that had survived for over 50 years. But the more I learned, the more I understood that the story was as much about the people who had been drawn into Cooper's orbit as it was about Cooper himself. The FBI had closed the case, but for me, it was very much open. My past failures echoed in my mind, hauntings of other cases that had slipped through my fingers. Each unsolved mystery was a failure that weighed heavily on my conscience, yet the prospect of solving Cooper's case drove me forward. This was my chance to salvage my career, to reclaim my confidence, and perhaps to find some semblance of closure. Just then my phone buzzed, breaking the spell. It was Laura. "Jake, I found something. Can we meet?" Her voice was urgent, tinged with excitement. I replied quickly, "Where?" "At the diner on 5th. You remember the one we discussed? The one where Cooper was last seen?" I felt a surge of adrenaline. It wasn't often that Laura showed this level of interest in the case outside of our scheduled meetings. In the dim light of the car, I checked my watch. Time was of the essence. I arrived at the diner, a small establishment laden with history, much like the case itself. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, and the warm air enveloped me like a comforting embrace. I spotted Laura in a booth at the back, her laptop open and a stack of papers strewn across the table. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and I could tell she hadn't simply stumbled upon something trivial. "Jake, over here," she called, her voice barely rising above the hum of the diner. As I approached, she gestured for me to sit. "You're not going to believe what I found in the archives. There's a new lead regarding Cooper's identity. It's not definitive, but it could point us in a promising direction." My heart raced. "What do you have?" Laura leaned in closer, a conspiratorial whisper escaping her lips. "There's a man, an ex-military parachutist, who was in the area when Cooper disappeared. He had a history of skydiving and a suspiciously similar vehicle description. The FBI dismissed him years ago, but I'm not so sure now." I glanced at her laptop screen. where a faded photograph of a man in military attire stared back at me. The resemblance was striking, but nothing more than a coincidence, perhaps. What makes you think he's worth pursuing? There are connections, Jake. He was involved in several unsolved cases concerning hijackings. Plus, this man vanished from the records for a decade after Cooper's disappearance. It's as if he fell off the face of the earth. I rubbed my chin, contemplating the implications. The more I dug into Cooper, the more I realized that every clue was another door to open, a path that could lead to the truth or lead us deeper into the labyrinth of deception. This man could be the key to unraveling a mystery that had captivated the nation for decades. Let's track him down then. We need to dig deeper, I said, determination fueling my voice. If there's even a chance he's connected to D.B. Cooper, we can't let it slip away. Laura nodded, her eyes lighting up with a spark of excitement. I'll gather everything I can and reach out to my contacts. We need to be careful, though. This could open old wounds, and we don't know what we're dealing with. As we made our plans, the rain outside began to taper off, but I felt an electric charge in the air, an omen that we were on the precipice of something significant. The mystery of D.B. Cooper was far from over, and I had a nagging sense that the truth was waiting for us just around the corner. As I stepped back into the rain-soaked night, the bridge loomed in my mind once more. Tomorrow, I would be there, ready to confront the shadows of the past. But tonight, our pursuit of the ex-military parachutist had begun, and I felt the thrill of the chase coursing through my veins. The pieces of this intricate puzzle were starting to come together, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The Vanishing of D.B. Cooper was a story that refused to be forgotten, and I was willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. I pulled my coat tighter against the biting wind as I stepped onto the street, my mind swirling with the weight of unanswered questions. The case of D.B. Cooper had haunted me since I took it on. I'd spent countless hours sifting through files, piecing together the fragmented tales of witnesses and investigators alike. Each lead brought me closer, yet wrapped me deeper in a veil of uncertainty. My next destination was the old warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place rumored to have ties to Cooper's enigmatic disappearance. The rain drummed on my umbrella, matching my heartbeat as I approached the entrance. Flickering lights illuminated the peeling paint and cracked windows, a reminder of better days long gone. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of metal and mildew. Shadows danced across the walls, cast by the dim light bulb swinging from the ceiling. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, the echoes of the past whispering secrets that had long been buried. "Jake!" I turned at the sound of Laura's voice, her silhouette emerging from the shadows. Agent Laura Fields had been my ally in this pursuit, her analytical mind often cutting through the fog of confusion that surrounded Cooper's case. "Did you find anything?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the rhythmic tapping of raindrops on the roof. "Some old records from the airline," she replied, handing me a folder. "They detail the flight patterns around the hijacking and some unusual incidents around that time." I flipped through the yellowing pages, scanning for anything that could hint at Cooper's whereabouts after the jump. "This is good, but we need something more concrete," Laura nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "What if we focused on the money? The FBI tracked a portion of it to several locations after the hijacking. There might be clues hidden there." I felt a spark of excitement ignite within me. The true mystery of Cooper's fate lay not just in the man himself, but in the money that had been exchanged. "Let's start with the last known locations. We can work backward from there." As we left the warehouse, the rain had eased to a gentle patter. The streets glistened under the few streetlights that flickered like dying stars. We climbed into my car, the engine roaring to life amidst the silence of the night. The first stop was a small-town diner, where one of the cashiers had reported a suspicious man making a large cash purchase shortly after the hijacking. Laura scrolled through her notes, her brow slightly wrinkled in concentration. It was the same day, shortly after noon. If Cooper landed in this area, he could have easily blended in. As we drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that the clock was ticking. Each passing moment felt crucial, an opportunity to uncover the truth slipping through my fingers like rainwater. Arriving at the diner, we were greeted by the familiar warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold outside. The neon sign buzzed softly, a beacon of light in the otherwise gloomy night. We entered, and the scent of coffee and greasy food wrapped around us. I approached the counter, glancing at the waitress who seemed to recognize the weight of our mission. "Can I help you?" she asked, brushing her hands on her apron. "We're looking for information about a man who paid in cash here on the day of the hijacking," I explained. "Do you remember anything unusual?" Her eyes flickered with thought. "Well, it's been a while, but I remember a fellow who seemed off. He was quiet, kept to himself, but I could tell he had money. He ordered a big breakfast, paid with a stack of bills." Laura leaned in closer. "Did he say anything? Act strange?" "Not really, just that he was traveling. But there was something about him, something that made me uneasy." I exchanged a glance with Laura, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit together. "Do you remember what he looked like?" "Sort of. He had dark hair, kind of unkempt, and he wore a jacket that looked too big for him. And his eyes, they were piercing, like he was always watching." I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't much, but it could be a lead worth pursuing. "Thank you," I said, jotting down notes as Laura continued to ask questions. After leaving the diner, we retraced his possible movements based on the cash he spent. We were piecing together a timeline that could reveal Cooper's fate after the infamous jump. As we delved deeper, I began to realize that Cooper wasn't just a case. He was a ghost that lingered in the shadows, refusing to let go. The haunting mystery of his disappearance was intertwined with the lives of those he touched, whether they knew him or not. The rain continued to fall, each drop resonating like a heartbeat in the silence of the night. I felt the pull of the unknown, an urge to chase after the specter of D.B. Cooper until there was nothing left but the truth. "Jake," Laura called softly, pulling me from my thoughts. "What's our next move?" I looked up, determination settling into my bones. "We need to find that stack of cash. There's a story hidden in that money, something that could finally lead us to Cooper." As we drove into the darkness, I felt the weight of the night pressing in around us. The rain began to pour harder, drumming against the roof of the car, echoing the urgency I felt. We were moving closer to something, I could sense it. With each mile, the mystery deepened, and the stakes grew higher. "Let's see where this takes us," I said, shifting the car into gear, ready to chase down the remnants of a legend that had captivated a nation. And as we disappeared into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of uncovering secrets that had long been buried beneath layers of fear, excitement, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Our next destination loomed ahead, promising more revelations, and perhaps the final pieces of Cooper's elusive puzzle. The glow of streetlights flickered like ghosts in the heavy rain, casting dancing shadows on the windshield. I stole a glance at Laura, her brow furrowed in thought as she reviewed her notes on the Cooper case. She had a knack for finding connections in the seemingly random details, and I appreciated her analytical mind, even if it sometimes clashed with my more instinctual approach. "You know, Jake, every time I think I've understood Cooper's plan, something throws me off course," she said, breaking the silence that had settled between us. "The way he chose his flight, the timing of the hijacking, there's a reason behind every move he made." I nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "It's like he was playing a game, but the rules are hidden from us. What could he have possibly wanted? Was it just the money, or was there something larger at play?" Laura tapped her pen against her notebook, her eyes narrowing as if she were piecing together a puzzle. "The fact that he vanished without a trace is what has kept this case alive for so long. Think about it. No one has ever claimed the ransom money, not a single trace leading to him after he jumped. It's unsettling." The rain intensified, each drop a reminder of the urgency of our mission. We were on our way to a secluded cabin in the woods, a place where new evidence had surfaced. Some local hikers claimed to have found a stash of items they believed belonged to Cooper himself. I had my doubts, but the possibility of new leads was enough to keep me focused. As we approached the cabin, the trees loomed larger, their branches clawing at the sky like the fingers of a ghost. I parked the car, and we stepped out, the cold air biting at our skin. The cabin looked as though it had been untouched for years. Moss clung to the wooden sides, and the windows were dusty and grimy. We made our way inside, the creaking of the floorboards echoing through the empty space. The interior was dimly lit, with only a few beams of moonlight filtering through the dirty windows. Scattered about were old furniture pieces, remnants of a life that once was. Laura turned her flashlight around, illuminating the corners of the room. "Look at this," she said, kneeling beside a small wooden chest tucked away in the corner. Dust motes danced in the beam of her light as she opened it, revealing a collection of items: a parachute, a worn-out jacket, and a few documents that looked like they had faded over time. My heart raced as I approached her. Could this actually be it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The items were disheveled, but they still emanated a sense of mystery. "We need to get these back to the lab for analysis," Laura nodded, examining the parachute closely. "It's definitely old, but we need to confirm if it's the same type used by Cooper. If it is, we could have a breakthrough." She carefully folded the parachute and placed it back in the chest. As we rifled through the documents, one caught my eye: a faded airline ticket, its details almost impossible to read. I held it up to the light, squinting in an attempt to decipher its contents. "What does it say?" Laura asked, her curiosity piqued. "It looks like a ticket from a flight that stopped in Portland, but the rest is too faded. No names, no dates, just a destination," I replied, frustration creeping in. Just then, I heard a rustling sound outside the cabin, sending a shiver down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my senses suddenly heightened. Laura nodded, her expression serious. "We might not be alone here. It's probably just wildlife, but let's be cautious." We moved toward the door, both of us straining to listen. The rain continued to pour, drowning out most noises. But there it was, a distinct crunching sound, like footsteps on the gravel path. "Stay behind me," I instructed, my instincts kicking in. I pushed the door open slowly, damp wood protesting against the hinges. As I peered outside, my heart sank. A figure stood a few yards away, partially obscured by the trees, watching us. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure remained still, and as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could make out the outline of a hooded sweatshirt. I stepped forward, adrenaline rushing through my veins. "We have no intention of causing trouble, just investigating a cold case." The figure shifted slightly, and I could just barely make out a face hidden in the shadows. My mind raced with thoughts of who it could be. Another investigator, a curious local, or someone with more sinister motives? To our surprise, the figure stepped into the light, revealing an older man with a weathered face and piercing blue eyes. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I mean you no harm. I'm just a researcher. I've been tracking Cooper for years." Laura exchanged a glance with me, her skepticism evident. "A researcher? What do you know about him?" The man took a step closer, lowering his hands. "More than you might think. I've found pieces of the puzzle that you won't find in any official reports. But trust is a fragile thing. Are you willing to listen?" As I considered his words, the night grew heavier around us, the rain drumming a steady rhythm against the cabin roof. The stakes had just risen, and we were now faced with a choice: confront the unknown or retreat to the safety of our investigation. I took a deep breath, realizing that this could lead us down a dangerous path, but one that might finally answer the lingering questions. "All right," I said, glancing at Laura for her approval. "Let's hear what you have to say." With the weight of the night pressing down, I stepped forward into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next might reshape everything we thought we knew about D.B. Cooper. I leaned forward, the dim light of the motel room casting shadows across my face as the man cleared his throat. His name was Frank, a middle-aged man with weary eyes that had seen too much. He looked like he had spent decades carrying the burden of a secret, one that could change everything we thought we knew about Cooper's fate. "You know, I was there the night it happened. Frank began, his voice low but steady. "I was a kid just a few blocks away when the news hit. But it wasn't just the hijacking that stuck in my mind. It was what came after." I nodded, urging him to continue. "Go on," I encouraged, sensing that his memories were a key to piecing together this elusive puzzle. Frank hesitated, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Everyone thought Cooper was some kind of mastermind, right? But what if I told you he wasn't alone?" I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was the angle I hadn't considered. "What do you mean, not alone?" I pressed, my heart racing. He leaned back, his expression shifting from anxious to contemplative. "I heard whispers, you know. Kids talk. I overheard my old man and his buddies discussing a plan, a backup. They thought Cooper was just a distraction." "A distraction for what?" I asked, intrigued by this new lead. Frank took a breath, seemingly gathering courage. "They were talking about a shipment, a plane filled with money that was supposed to come in shortly after Cooper jumped. They thought there was a chance to grab it while everyone was focused on the hijacking." His words hung heavy in the air, like smoke from a dying fire. "So, you're saying there were two operations happening simultaneously?" "Exactly," he said, leaning in closer. "And I think Cooper might have been part of something much bigger than anyone realized. He may have gone into hiding, not out of fear, but because he was in on a larger scheme." I felt my skepticism waver. Giving credence to his claim meant unraveling everything I thought I knew. "Do you have any proof? Anything that could help corroborate your story?" Frank hesitated again, rummaging through his coat pocket. He pulled out an old, yellowed newspaper clipping and handed it to me. The headline screamed about the hijacking, but under it, in smaller print, was an article about a robbery that occurred in the same vicinity shortly after Cooper's disappearance. "Look at the dates," he urged. "It's too coincidental for it to be just that." I scanned the article, my mind racing. Could it be that Cooper had planned this, with accomplices waiting in the wings ready to seize the chaos? As I returned my gaze to Frank, I sensed urgency in his demeanor. "You need to dig deeper, Detective. There are records, people who were around back then who might still be alive. This city is full of secrets, and I think Cooper's isn't the only one." His words ignited a new fire within me. The pieces were beginning to fit, but they only led to more questions. Who was Cooper, really? What was the true nature of this operation, and who were these so-called accomplices? I couldn't shake the feeling that Frank was holding back, perhaps fearing for his own safety. "What else do you know?" I pressed, feeling the weight of the investigation bearing down on me. He looked away, avoidance clouding his expression. "There are things that are best left buried," he muttered, then added more resolutely. "But if you're serious about getting to the bottom of this, you might want to speak to my uncle. He knew some of the guys involved back in the day. He's still around, but he's not easy to find. He prefers to stay hidden." "Where can I find him?" I asked, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. Frank described a dilapidated bar on the outskirts of town, a place that had seen better days and where shadows lurked in every corner. "Just be careful, Jake. Some of these memories are dangerous." With renewed determination, I tucked the newspaper clipping into my pocket, nodding in acknowledgement of Frank's warning. "Thank you, Frank. I appreciate your courage in coming forward." He nodded, a glimmer of relief crossing his face. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Not everyone wants the truth to come out." After our conversation, I stepped outside into the rain-soaked streets, the cool air refreshing after the stifling tension of the motel room. My mind raced with possibilities, yet I felt a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. The mystery of Cooper was no longer just a tale of a man who vanished into thin air. It was a web of deceit and conspiracies that needed unraveling. As I made my way to my car, the streets glistened under the streetlights, reflecting my own uncertainties. I knew the journey ahead would not be easy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a world where danger lurked at every turn. My thoughts drifted back to Frank's final words, a warning echoing in my mind. In the days to come, I would have to navigate not just the past, but the present, where shadows could hide secrets far more dangerous than I'd anticipated. A new lead awaited me, but it was a path filled with uncertainty and risk. What I discovered next could either lead to the truth or bury me beneath the weight of a conspiracy far greater than D.B. Cooper. It was time to find Frank's uncle, and with it, the next chapter of this haunting mystery. I turned the ignition, the engine roaring to life as the rain fell harder, pounding against the windshield like a relentless drum. With every drop, I felt the pressure of the truth pulling me forward into the unknown, ready to uncover what lay behind the curtain of history that obscured Cooper's fate. And so, I set off, determined to find answers, aware that each revelation might lead me closer to the heart of the mystery, or deeper into a danger I could not yet comprehend. As I navigated the slick roads, I could only hope that the shadows of the past would guide me, rather than obscure the truth that had eluded so many before me. The rain was relentless as I sat in my cluttered office, scanning through newspaper clippings and old FBI reports on D.B. Cooper. The clock ticked softly in the background, each tick echoing my impatience. I'd spent weeks piecing together a timeline of events, and yet each connection I made only seemed to invite more questions. Was Cooper truly dead, as many believed, or had he vanished into thin air, taking his secrets with him? It was then that Agent Laura Fields walked in, her presence cutting through the thick atmosphere of the room. Her analytical mind had been a valuable asset in the investigation, and today, she carried a folder filled with new evidence. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, placing the folder on my desk. The smell of damp paper wafted up, mingling with the scent of wet pavement outside. I flipped it open, revealing photographs of a man who had been sighted in a small town in Washington just weeks after Cooper's disappearance. "What do you think?" Laura asked, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of recognition. I leaned closer to the photographs. The man was rugged, with a scruffy beard and dark hair. There was something haunting about his gaze, a familiarity that tugged at my memory. "Looks like a ghost, doesn't he?" I murmured, feeling the weight of the moment. The lead was tenuous at best, but it was a lead nonetheless. "Do we have any background on him?" Laura shook her head. "Not much, just that he was a drifter, seen around the time of the hijacking. But his description matches with several other sightings across the country. We might be chasing shadows, Jake. Or uncovering the truth, Laura. This could be it. Our chance to finally put this case to rest," I said, my determination igniting once more. I leaned back in my chair, contemplating the next steps. We spent the next few hours sifting through the folder, drawing connections between the man in the photographs and Cooper. I found myself lost in the details, envisioning a different life for Cooper, one that could have existed had he made it out alive that night. Was he living under a different name, or had he integrated into society, forever haunted by the decisions he made? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my office, I felt an unsettling sensation creep up my spine. It wasn't just the unresolved mystery of Cooper looming over me. I had a feeling we were being watched. "You ever get the sense we're not alone in this?" I asked suddenly. Breaking the silence between us, Laura glanced toward the window. "You mean like someone's keeping tabs on our investigation?" "Exactly. It's like we're treading on someone's territory." She nodded, her brow furrowing. "I've had that feeling too. I did some digging into the agents who've worked this case. There's a lot of pressure from above to close it, and not all of them agree with how we're going about it." I rubbed my temples, frustration building. "That's exactly why we need to press on. If there's any chance this man is Cooper, we owe it to him and ourselves to find out the truth." We decided to track down the most recent sighting of the man in the photos. He had been seen in a diner in a small town near the Cascades, a place where few ventured during the rainy season. With little more than a name and a fleeting description, we prepared for a road trip that could either lead us to a breakthrough or into deeper danger. As we drove through the winding roads, the rain drumming against the windshield, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Our conversation turned to Cooper's infamous skydiving skills, a topic that had become a central element in our investigation, a deepening curiosity about how someone could execute such a daring act with so little information. "Do you think he survived the jump?" Laura asked, her voice steady yet curious. I considered her question seriously. Survival would have depended on a lot of factors: his landing zone, his equipment, Reports suggest he jumped with a minimal plan. If he landed in a densely wooded area, he might have faced serious injuries. Or he could have simply vanished into the forest, disappearing into history as if he'd never existed, she replied, her eyes reflecting the dim streetlights. A perfect crime, if you think about it. But it's too perfect. There's always a trail, Laura. Always. As we neared the diner, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. What if we found something? What if we didn't? The dichotomy weighed heavily as I parked the car. The building stood alone on the roadside, its neon lights flickering in the dusk. I glanced at Laura, and she nodded, her expression resolute. We stepped inside, greeted by the warmth of the diner and the aroma of coffee. The patrons inside looked up briefly before returning to their meals. I approached the counter, where a weary waitress was wiping down the surface. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're looking for someone who might have been seen here a while back. A man with a scruffy beard, maybe a little rough around the edges." The waitress paused, pondering, before shaking her head. "I see all kinds of folks in here. Hard to remember anyone in particular, especially if they didn't make an impression. Could you try? Just think back to that night. He might have ordered something unusual or seemed out of place," Laura added, her analytical mind taking charge. The waitress frowned, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Well, there was a guy who came in around the time you're talking about. He had a strange request for food. Said he wanted it to go, but he didn't have any money. Just sat there for a while, looking around. Then left pretty quickly." My heart raced as I leaned closer. "Do you remember anything else?" "What did he look like?" "Just a little dirty and kind of wild-looking, like he'd been on the road a long time. I didn't get his name, but he had this scar across his hand. I can still see it." I exchanged a glance with Laura, noting the significance of the scar. "Did he happen to say anything? Anything at all?" The waitress thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, not really. Just seemed skittish. I didn't think much of it at the time." Disappointment washed over me, but I knew we were onto something. As we were about to leave, I spotted a newspaper clipping pinned to the wall. A photo caught my eye, a sketch of the man we were looking for, right next to an article about Cooper's hijacking. "That's him," I pointed, my pulse quickening. "He looks just like the man in the photographs." Laura and I exchanged determined glances. We were closer than ever to uncovering the truth. But as we turned to leave, a shadow loomed in the doorway, one that sent a chill down my spine. A figure stepped inside, his face half hidden by the brim of a hat. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. This was no ordinary customer. I leaned closer to Laura, whispering, "Let's not lose sight of what we came for. We need to find out who he is." As the figure approached the counter, we positioned ourselves strategically to eavesdrop. The air thickened with tension as we prepared for what might be our next big break, or a confrontation that could lead us into deeper danger. The sudden darkness cast a veil over the diner, and the faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that broke the silence. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I instinctively reached for the flashlight in my coat pocket, its cool metal reassuring against my palm. A few seconds later, the emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim glow that barely illuminated the room. Shadows danced on the walls, and the silhouettes of patrons appeared startled, their confusion mirroring my own. Agent Fields was the first to regain her composure. "Jake, we need to find that stranger before he gets away. He might be our only lead on Cooper's disappearance." I nodded, my heart racing. The man in the corner booth had been watching us, his eyes sharp and discerning, as if he knew more than he let on. But now, he was lost amongst the other shadows, and the flickering lights made our task all the more challenging. "Let's split up," I suggested, my voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at me. "You check the back exit. I'll go around the front and see if he's still here," Laura agreed, her brow furrowing as she adjusted her FBI badge clipped to her belt. "Just be careful, Jake. There's something off about this guy." I pushed through the kitchen door, the scent of grease and stale coffee washing over me. The staff inside were flustered, trying to restore order amid the chaos. I maneuvered past them, my eyes scanning the small space for any clue that the stranger had left. The back exit was deserted, and I felt a pang of disappointment. Had he slipped out while we were distracted? I stepped into the darker corridor, leading to the employee break room. There, I found a crumpled piece of paper lying on the floor, as if it had fallen from the stranger's pocket. I picked it up and quickly unfolded it, revealing a series of numbers and letters that made no immediate sense to me. It was either a code or a clue, perhaps something related to Cooper. "Jake," I heard Laura's voice echoing from the main area. I quickly shoved the note into my pocket and rushed back out to find her standing at the entrance. "He's gone," she said, frustration evident in her tone. I checked the alley, but he must have slipped away during the blackout. I cursed under my breath, feeling the weight of the elusive man's escape. "But he left something behind," I said, pulling out the scrap of paper. Laura's eyes widened as she leaned closer, studying the strange characters. "What do you think it means?" she asked, her analytical side kicking in. I shrugged, glancing around as more diners began to murmur nervously, recounting their own theories about the blackout. "It could be coordinates or a cipher. We need to find out fast." We returned to our booth, my mind racing as I examined the note again. With the clock ticking and our lead vanishing into the rainy night, I felt the pressure mounting. I glanced at the paper, the numbers seeming to swirl and pulse with meaning, begging for attention. "What if it's a location?" Laura suggested, her voice steady and methodical. "Maybe he was trying to point us in the direction of Cooper's past." I thought for a moment. The name D.B. Cooper had become synonymous with mystery and intrigue, and every lead, no matter how small, was significant. It was my job to sift through the remnants of the past, to make sense of what had been lost. I pulled out my phone, the screen illuminating the darkened diner. "I'll check these coordinates against the map of known Cooper sightings and connections. Let's see if there's a place that fits." As I scrolled through the data, the diner continued to buzz with speculation and fear. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me. The case had haunted me for years, and every time I thought I was closer to the truth, it slipped further away. But this time, I felt a flicker of hope. "Here," I exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "This location matches a possible drop zone from Cooper's flight path. It's not far from here. We need to head out there now." Laura nodded, her sharp mind already calculating the next steps. "Let's grab our gear and move. If he's connected to Cooper, we might finally get the breakthrough we need." We hurried back to the car, the rain still beating down relentlessly, turning the streets into a slick ribbon of reflections. I could feel a mixture of excitement and dread as we sped through the night. The landscape blurred past, a montage of shadowy trees and flickering streetlights, each moment amplifying the urgency of our mission. Moments later, we arrived at the coordinates, a secluded area on the outskirts of town. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the wind, the underbrush thick with shadows. I could feel the weight of anticipation in the air, as if the forest held its breath, waiting for us to uncover its secrets. "Stay close," I instructed as we stepped out of the vehicle, our flashlights piercing through the dense darkness. The ground squelched beneath our feet, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. This place felt alive, an echo of Cooper's past whispers in the rustling leaves. We moved deeper into the woods, the beam of our flashlights revealing an old weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Timberline Park. No trespassing after dark." Ignoring the warning, we pressed on, the thrill of discovery pushing us forward. Suddenly, a sound pierced the night, a crack of branches breaking, followed by hurried footsteps. I turned sharply, heart racing. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my instincts kicking in. Laura nodded, her expression tense. Just then, a shadow darted past us, vanishing into the trees. Without a second thought, I took off in pursuit, adrenaline coursing through my veins, the hunt for answers igniting a fire within me. The chase led us deeper into the woods, where the darkness seemed to close in around us. I could feel Laura right behind me, her determination matching my own. But as we rounded a bend, I abruptly halted, the beam of my flashlight illuminating a figure standing still, partially obscured by the thick foliage. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice steady despite the tension in my chest. The figure turned slowly. revealing a familiar face hidden beneath a hood. It was the stranger from the diner, his eyes glinting with a mix of fear and resolve. The moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken truths, as I took a cautious step forward. I could sense that this encounter was about to unravel the mystery that had haunted me for too long, and just like that, the next piece of the puzzle fell into place. "I know why you're here," the stranger said, his voice low and urgent, "and it's not what you think." With that, we stood at the precipice of revelation, the shadows swirling around us, each second stretching into eternity as I braced myself for the truth. What lay ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but I knew one thing for certain: the chase was far from over. As I prepared to ask my next question, I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us. And I knew that this encounter would change everything. But first, you need to understand something about D.B. Cooper. The rain pattered softly against the window as I stared into my half-finished coffee, deep in thought. The case was as elusive as the man himself. D.B. Cooper had become a ghost, slipping through the fingers of every investigator who dared to chase his shadow. When I glanced up, I found Laura studying the scattered papers on our table, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You know, I keep coming back to that witness statement," she said, her voice low but firm. "It could provide us with a direct link to Cooper." I nodded, recalling the details. The witness, an elderly man with a shaky memory, described seeing someone fitting Cooper's description in a gas station during the early hours after the hijacking. "But any info he provides could be clouded by time. We need something concrete, something that can tie him to the money or the jump itself." "Exactly, but it's a start. Let's dig deeper into his story. Maybe there's a chance he remembers more details than he's already given." As we strategized our next steps, the diner door swung open, letting in a gust of cold, wet air. A figure stepped inside, shaking off an umbrella. I squinted, recognizing the silhouette of Jerry, a local reporter who had been covering the Cooper case for decades. He made his way toward us, a look of urgency plastered across his face. "Jake, Laura, I need to talk to you both. Now," he said, sliding into the booth without waiting for an invitation. Laura and I exchanged glances, curiosity piqued. "What's going on, Jerry?" I asked, bracing myself for the unexpected. "I've got a lead on someone who claims to know Cooper, or at least who he is, a former associate. He's been laying low since the jump, and I think he's ready to talk." The air in the booth thickened with anticipation. "Where do we find him?" Laura pressed. "He's holed up in a rundown motel outside of town. I've got the address, but he's been jumpy lately. I'll take you there, but we need to be careful." As Jerry spoke, my mind raced with possibilities. Could this be the break we needed? The thought of standing face to face with someone who might have insights into Cooper's identity sent a shiver down my spine. I felt a swell of hope mixed with the familiar weight of skepticism. "Let's go," I said, my resolve solidifying. We paid our bill and followed Jerry out into the rain-soaked streets. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and gasoline, and the rhythmic sound of rain became a haunting backdrop to our clandestine mission. As we drove toward the motel, I glanced at Laura, who was lost in her thoughts, her concentration unbroken. After what felt like an eternity, we arrived at the motel, its neon sign flickering through the curtain of rain. Jerry led us to a room at the far end of the building, his expression tense. "Stay sharp," he whispered. I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Just as Jerry raised his hand to knock, a shout echoed from inside the room. "What do you want? Get out!" The voice was rough, laced with fear and defiance. I exchanged a look with Laura, and we stepped back slightly, allowing Jerry to take the lead. "It's Jerry! Open up! We're here to talk!" he called out. Silence followed, punctuated only by the sound of rain drumming persistently against the roof. I could feel my pulse quickening as the seconds ticked away. Then, reluctantly, the door cracked open just enough for a pair of wary eyes to peek out. "What do you want?" The voice was now softer, but still edged with reluctance. Jerry took a step forward. "We need to ask you about D.B. Cooper. We think you might have some information that could help us." There was a moment of hesitation before the door opened slightly wider, revealing a disheveled man in a worn bathrobe and unkempt hair. His eyes darted nervously as he looked between us. "I don't want any trouble. I don't know nothing about no Cooper." Laura stepped forward, her analytical gaze locked onto his. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want the truth. You've been hiding for a long time. Why?" "What do you know?" The man's defenses crumbled under her steady gaze. He let out a heavy sigh, glancing around as if the shadows themselves might betray him. "I knew him. I didn't want to, but I did. He wasn't who everyone thinks he was." My heart raced. The implications of his words were profound. "What do you mean?" I pressed, leaning in closer, eager to uncover the layers of this mysterious connection. His name was not D.B. Cooper. That was a cover, an illusion. He was just a man looking for a way out of his life. He didn't intend for anyone to get hurt. He thought he could vanish. But he miscalculated. We all did. The rain continued to pour outside, mirroring the storm brewing in my mind. Every word he spoke sent ripples of intrigue through my thoughts. This wasn't just about a hijacking anymore. It was about the nature of identity, desperation, and the lengths one would go to escape. "What happened to him?" Laura asked, her voice a mixture of urgency and curiosity. The man hesitated, his eyes flickering with fear. "I can't tell you that here. It's not safe. You need to meet me later, somewhere private." I exchanged a glance with Laura, both of us recognizing this moment as pivotal. The rain intensified outside, a fitting soundtrack to the gravity of our situation. "We'll meet you," I said, steeling myself for what lay ahead. As we stepped back from the door, I realized this was just the beginning of another tangled web in the hunt for D.B. Cooper. "Where?" Jerry interjected, jotting down a note. The man hesitated before finally speaking again, his voice barely above a whisper. "The old warehouse by the river, midnight. No one can see us." With a nod, I turned back to Laura, sensing the weight of the night pressing down on us. We had to prepare for whatever truths lay ahead, knowing that the ghosts of the past were about to become very real. As we walked back to the car, I glanced back at the motel, the man's shadow lingering in my mind. This was no longer just a case. It was a journey into the unknown, where every secret could lead us closer to the truth or further into darkness. "Let's get our gear and come back ready," I said, a mix of excitement and dread churning within me. Laura nodded, determination etched on her face. As we drove away, the rain continued to fall, washing the world around us as we prepared for the revelations that lurked just beyond the shadows. The night was still young, but the mystery of D.B. Cooper was only beginning to unfold. And as the clock ticked closer to midnight, I knew that the next chapter would reveal secrets that had remained hidden for far too long. The rain tapped against the windshield like anxious fingers, mirroring my own restless thoughts. I glanced at Laura, her brow furrowed in concentration as she reviewed her notes. We had agreed to meet with a former flight attendant who claimed to have seen something unusual the night of the hijacking. She had reached out to us after years of silence, and the timing felt almost too coincidental to ignore. "You know, Jake," Laura said, breaking the silence, "there are people who believe Cooper didn't just disappear. Some say he was trying to leave behind a message. I mean, could he have left a clue for someone?" I nodded, stirring the remnants of a cold coffee at my side. "Or maybe he wanted to take the secret of his identity to the grave. Whatever he did that night, it was calculated. You don't pull off a stunt like that without planning every detail." The warehouse loomed ahead, an ominous structure shrouded in darkness. As we parked, I felt my heart race, a mixture of excitement and dread. The old place creaked under the weight of memories. This was where many unsolved cases found their graves. But tonight, we hoped to breathe life into a long-silenced mystery. Walking inside, the dampness of the air enveloped us, a stark contrast to the warmth of the city we left behind. We spotted a figure leaning against a wooden crate, her silhouette barely illuminated by a flickering overhead light. She looked up as we approached, her face a blend of apprehension and resolve. "Detective Sullivan, Agent Fields," she greeted us, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure if you would." It's been so many years. We're here to listen, I assured her, gesturing for us to take a seat across from her. Her name was Clara, and she had been a flight attendant on the doomed flight. As she settled into her seat, I could see the shadows of memories flickering behind her eyes. What happened that night? I asked, leaning forward. Clara took a deep breath, her gaze distant as if she were peering into the past. I remember the chaos when we landed, the tension in the cabin, the fear on everyone's faces. But there was something else, something not many people know about. I saw him, Cooper. I saw him through a crack in the curtain while we were on the tarmac. He was different, calm, almost too calm for a man who had just hijacked a plane. Laura scribbled notes furiously, her analytical mind racing. What do you mean different? She pressed, her voice steady and firm. He had a look about him, like he wasn't worried at all about getting caught. And I swear, he slipped something to a man in a suit, someone who was waiting on the ground. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now, I can't shake the feeling it was important. I exchanged glances with Laura, her eyes widening in realization. Did you get a look at this man? I asked, hoping for any details that could lead us closer to answers. Clara shook her head, her hands trembling. No, it was too dark, and I was too far away. But I think he was watching Cooper, making sure everything went according to plan. It was like they were in cahoots. The revelation hung in the air, thick with intrigue. My mind raced through the implications. If Clara's memory held any truth, it indicated a level of sophistication far beyond a mere hijacking. Do you remember anything else? Anything you might have overlooked? Laura pressed, her voice urgent. Clara hesitated, her lips pursed. There was a noise, a faint sound. I thought it was just the engines, but it was almost like a signal. I dismissed it at the time, but now it feels significant. It's been haunting me for years. The pieces started to align in my mind, but questions swirled like the rain outside. What if there was a deeper conspiracy at play? What if Cooper was not just an individual, but part of a larger scheme? I leaned back, allowing the wheels in my head to turn. Clara, would you be willing to go through some sketches or photos? We need to know if you can recognize the man you saw, I suggested, hoping to draw her back into the moment. Yep. She nodded slowly, determination overtaking her fear. Yes, I think I still have the sketches from that night. They've been sitting in a box for decades, but maybe, just maybe, they could help. As she rummaged through her bag, Laura and I exchanged knowing glances. This could be the breakthrough we needed. The mystery surrounding D.B. Cooper was a tangled web of half-truths and rumors, but with Clara's account, we might finally untangle the threads. I want to help you, but I'm scared, I've kept quiet for so long. What if I'm remembered as the woman who didn't do enough? Clara's voice quivered. You're doing more than enough, Clara, I reassured her, feeling the weight of my own unresolved cases pressing on my conscience. This is your chance to set the record straight. Moments later, Clara produced a folder, and as she opened it, a slew of faded sketches tumbled out. There, among the old pages, was a drawing that caught my eye, an outline of a man with sharp features and a confident stance. My heart raced as a sense of familiarity washed over me. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the chance to connect the dots that had eluded so many. I leaned closer, studying the details, intrigued by the resemblance to various suspects we had encountered in our investigation. The rain continued to pour outside, but in that dimly lit warehouse, the storm of uncertainty began to settle as clarity approached. Let's document this, and see if we can uncover the truth behind this figure. If he was tied to Cooper, it could change everything we know about that night, I stated firmly, the determination surging within me. As Clara's eyes filled with hope, we began the process of piecing together the mystery, unaware that time was slipping through our fingers like grains of sand. The night was far from over, and with each passing moment, the shadow of D.B. Cooper loomed larger in our minds. But just as I felt a surge of optimism, the flickering lights above us dimmed, and the warehouse door creaked open slowly. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in darkness, and as my heart sank, I knew that whatever we had uncovered would lead to unforeseen challenges. The night was about to take another unexpected turn, and we were not alone in this quest for the truth. The figure drew closer, the dim light revealing a silhouette that sent a chill down my spine. It was a man, but not just any man. His demeanor suggested urgency, the kind that came from holding secrets far too heavy for one person to bear. I felt Laura tense beside me, her analytical mind racing through possibilities as she studied the stranger, who seemed to be both an enigma and a potential breakthrough in our investigation. "You're Jake Sullivan, right?" he asked, his voice gravelly yet sharp. I nodded slowly, gauging his posture and the flicker of his eyes. "I've got information about D.B. Cooper. You want answers? I can provide them, but not here. Too many ears." I exchanged a glance with Laura, weighing my options. This could be the lead we had been searching for, but the shadows around us felt thick with uncertainty. "Where do you suggest?" I asked, keeping my tone steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The man looked over his shoulder, paranoia woven into the very fabric of his being. "Follow me and keep your distance. I don't want anyone seeing us together." With that, he turned and began walking away, his gait purposeful yet cautious. I followed, Laura at my side, every instinct screaming that this could either be a trap or an opportunity we couldn't afford to miss. We slipped through alleyways, the rain drizzling down in a fine mist, making the asphalt shimmer in the dim light. My heart raced, not just from the chase, but from the weight of the history we were tapping into. D.B. Cooper had become a legend, a man who had slipped away into the ether, leaving behind questions that had festered for decades. If this man had answers, I was determined to extract them. After several turns, we arrived at a secluded diner, neon lights buzzing softly overhead. The man gestured for us to enter. It was a dive, its windows fogged up, and the smell of stale coffee and burnt grease hung in the air. Inside, the few patrons were huddled over their meals, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. He led us to a booth in the back corner, ensuring no one could overhear our conversation. "I'm here because I owe a debt to a ghost," he said, glancing around nervously before leaning in closer. D.B. Cooper wasn't just some random hijacker. He was involved in something bigger, something dangerous. And I can prove it. I leaned in, the anticipation gripping my throat. "What do you know about him?" "Enough to know that he didn't just disappear. He had plans, contingencies. He was after something more than just money. I've spent years piecing together his connections, and they're darker than anyone knows," Laura interjected, her analytical mind taking charge. "What kind of connections? Are we talking about criminal organizations, foreign entities?" He nodded gravely. "Both. There are whispers of a network that wanted Cooper's skills, and they weren't just going to let him walk away with the cash. He had intel, information that could expose them. The pieces began to fit together in my mind, like a jigsaw puzzle revealing a sinister image. And you? What's your role in all of this? Why do you want to share this information with us?" I asked, skeptical of his motives. He hesitated, fear painting his features. "Because I'm the last one left. The others, they didn't make it. If I don't get this out, it'll die with me, and the truth will remain buried. You have to understand, Cooper's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was a meticulously crafted escape, and he was willing to sacrifice anyone to make it happen." My mind raced as I processed this. If what he said was true, Cooper was not just a fugitive. He was a man taking on an entire system. But why now? Why reveal this to us? Laura leaned back, crossing her arms, analyzing him. "You want protection, don't you? You're scared." He dropped his gaze, the weight of his confession hanging in the air between us. "I've made enemies, and they're still looking for me. If they catch me, I won't be the only one who pays the price. You need to understand, the FBI was never going to find Cooper. I can tell you where he ended up, but it's not going to be easy. If you're in this with me, you need to trust me, and that's a rare commodity these days." After a moment of silence, I exchanged another glance with Laura, who seemed to be weighing the gravity of our situation. "We're in this now. There's no turning back. We need to know everything you can tell us." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right, but we need to move fast. I'll share what I know. But we have to get out of here before they come looking for me. As he leaned forward, the words spilling from his lips like a floodgate had opened, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This could lead us to the truth about D.B. Cooper, but it also felt like stepping into a darker part of the mystery that no one had dared to explore. The rain pounded against the diner's roof, rhythmically syncing with my pulse. We were on the brink of unraveling a decades-old enigma, but I had the unsettling feeling that the deeper we dug, the more dangerous the game would become. Yet, that was the thrill of being a private investigator, a reminder that every case was a dance with the unknown. As the man began to share Cooper's connections and the shadows that followed him, I couldn't shake the thought that we were being watched, that the very forces he feared were closing in on us. I leaned in closer, ready to absorb every ounce of information he had to offer, but I couldn't escape the sense that this was only the beginning of a far more intricate and perilous web. And just as I began to piece together the fragments of his story, the bell above the diner door jingled ominously, and I heard footsteps approaching. My heart sank, a cold shiver creeping down my spine as I turned to see who had just entered, the door swinging wide. As the figure stepped inside, I knew in that instant that the danger we had just begun to unravel was about to strike. The night was far from over, and in its shadows lay the answers we sought, along with the very threats that could consume us whole, and in that moment, whatever had been lurking just out of sight was now stepping into the light, ready to confront us. "I think we might have company," I murmured, my voice low but urgent as I turned back to Laura, preparing for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. I straightened up, squinting through the haze of smoke that curled lazily from a half-burnt cigarette on the table. The figure was cloaked in a thick overcoat, their face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. The air crackled with tension, and for a moment, I contemplated whether I was about to face an ally or an adversary. It was Agent Laura Fields, her sharp eyes glinting with a mix of determination and caution. She'd been poring over the evidence, dissecting every detail of D.B. Cooper's audacious crime, and I could see she was ready to share her latest findings. "Jake," she said, her voice low yet firm, "I think we may have uncovered something crucial." I leaned in closer, intrigued. "What did you find?" She pulled out a small yellowed envelope from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. It was addressed to the FBI, stamped with a date 1 week after the hijacking. This was buried in the archives, a tip-off from someone claiming to know Cooper's identity. I opened the envelope carefully, the brittle paper crinkling under my fingers. Inside was a letter, the ink faded, but still legible. It detailed an encounter with a man who matched the description of Cooper, a drifter seen at a diner in a small town just outside Portland. The letter claimed he spoke about the hijacking as if it were a game, boasting about his cleverness. "If this is genuine, it could lead us to him," Laura said, her voice steady yet laced with excitement. "But there's more." I glanced at her, sensing the shift in her demeanor. Her analytical mind was racing through possibilities. "What else?" She hesitated, as if weighing her next words. The tipster mentioned a location, a place where Cooper might have stashed part of the money. "We need to investigate it, but..." "But what?" "It's on the outskirts of a forest, renowned for its treacherous terrain. No one's dared venture there for decades, especially since the legends started sprouting about those who entered never returning." I swallowed, the weight of her words settling heavily in my stomach. The thrill of the chase was matched only by the shadows of potential danger, and I was all too familiar with the odds stacked against us. "We can't back down now," I said resolutely. "Every lead counts. If there's even a chance that Cooper left something behind, we need to find it." Laura nodded slowly, her resolve mirroring mine. "I'll gather the team, but we should be cautious. If Cooper is still out there..." Her voice trailed off, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. We both understood the implications. What if he was watching us now? As we prepared for the expedition, I couldn't shake off a feeling of being watched, a sense that the walls themselves had ears. The rain pounded against the window, a relentless reminder of the storm brewing outside, both in the sky and within our investigation. We made plans, gathering supplies and mapping out our route, but I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. The case of D.B. Cooper had already claimed so much, and I feared it wouldn't stop at just clues. The next day, we set out at dawn, the clouds hanging low, thick with rain. The forest loomed ahead, dense and foreboding. Every step we took felt laden with the past, a past that whispered of secrets and danger. As we navigated through the towering pines, I couldn't help but remember the stories I'd heard growing up, tales of those who entered and never returned. But this was different. I was not just chasing a ghost. I was chasing a man who had eluded the authorities, a man whose legacy haunted me like a shadow. Laura led the way, her instincts sharp and focused. We veered off the path, the underbrush clawing at my legs as we ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. It was eerily quiet, the only sounds being our footsteps and the distant rustling of leaves. As we continued, I felt the pulse of the forest around us, alive with its own secrets, threatening to envelop us. After what felt like hours, we reached a clearing, marked by a large, gnarled tree that stood like a sentinel. Laura stopped and pulled out the letter again, comparing the details with the landscape. "This must be the place," she said, her finger tracing a line on the paper. I scanned the area, my heart racing. What now? We search. If he buried the money or left clues, it has to be around here. As we began to comb through the earth and brush, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were not alone. Every snap of a twig sent my heart racing, and every whisper of wind felt like a warning. I thought about how much was riding on this moment, the possibility of solving a decades-old mystery, of finally bringing some closure. Hours passed without a breakthrough, and the sun began to descend, casting long shadows that stretched unnaturally along the ground. Just as weariness began to settle in, Laura's sharp intake of breath caught my attention. I turned to see her kneeling beside a patch of disturbed earth, her hands brushing away the leaves and dirt. "Jake, look!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. I knelt beside her, my breath catching in my throat. Beneath the layers of soil, glinting in the fading light, was a small metal box, rusty and weathered with age. My pulse quickened as I leaned closer. A mixture of excitement and dread swelling within me. Could this be it? The missing piece of the D.B. Cooper puzzle? As I reached for the box, a sudden rustle in the underbrush made us both freeze. We exchanged a glance, the unspoken fear clear between us. We were not alone. Whatever we had unearthed, we might have just disturbed something far more dangerous than we anticipated. As the rain pattered softly against the window, I sat in my dimly lit office, reflecting on the enigmatic case of D.B. Cooper. The mystery remained unresolved, much like the storm outside that never seemed to relent. Agent Laura Fields and I had followed countless leads, yet the truth eluded us, wrapped in layers of speculation and intrigue. The theories surrounding Cooper's fate continued to swirl in my mind, a testament to the power of the unknown. Though I may never find the answers I sought, I realized that some mysteries are meant to linger in the shadows, inviting us to ponder their depths as we drift into the realms of dreams. Perhaps D.B. Cooper's disappearance was not just a case, but a reminder that life, much like the rain, is full of unanswered questions and the beauty of the unknown.